What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and welcome to week 7 of my weekly CFL football pick show for the 2025 CFL season and postseason. And as you can tell from the thumbnail, it was right there in the palm of my hands. 4-2 through the first 2 games, including the sweep of the Calgary game. I told you. The sweeps were not done. I said it last week. And it was all in the palm of my hands, except for the fact that I had to bank on the Edmonton Elks, who proved that they are about what they are. So unfortunately, since my fortunes were put in the hands of the Edmonton Elks, I finished the week 4-5. Got swept on the last game of the week and wound up just a little bit underwater. 2-1 straight up and 1-2 both on the spreads and the totals. 4-5 for the week means I'm 14-9 straight up, which even if you look at some of like the experts and the CFL.ca writers, 14-9's not terrible, but the betting picks are just not going the way I want them to so far in the season. 10-13 against the spread, 7-15-1 on the totals, which means I'm still only 6 games under 500, which means one great week and we're like right back to starting stack. So I'm still looking for that one great week. Of course, an easy place to find great weeks is in my CFL fantasy rosters, because once again came up with a big triple-digit week in CFL fantasy, 118.5 in week 6, brings me to 665.6 points on the season, now officially averaging better than 110 points per week. And that has me very close to the rarefied air that I am looking for in CFL fantasy. I increased my overall ranking another 71 places last week, up to 624th overall. Top 500, I'm like less than 10 points outside the top 500. And top 250, I'm like 35 points shy of that. So again, very, very close to exactly where I want to be. I got to keep this momentum going. I got to keep chaining together great weeks in CFL fantasy. In my 2 CFL fantasy leagues, the CFL Central League as well as Christina's League, CFL Central, I moved inside the top 100, officially number 100 out of 1,272 entries. That's an increase of 26 places from last week. And in Christina's League, I cracked the top 50, number 49 of 359 entries in that league, an increase of 16 over last week. So again, we just continue moving in the right direction in CFL fantasy. Shout out to my week 6 MVP for the second week in a row. It's wide receiver Kenny Lawler for the Hamilton Ticats. 6 catches, 95 yards, 2 more touchdowns. I'm quite sure he's the league leader at this point. 27.5 fantasy points for me, all in the receiving game for Kenny Lawler. Back-to-back monster weeks for him. We're back to 4-game weeks here in the CFL schedule here for week 7. We got the Toronto Argos in Montreal taking on the Alouettes. We got the Calgary Stampeders on the road for the second week in a row in Winnipeg taking on the Bombers. We got the Saskatchewan Roughriders hitting the road, going to BC to take on Nathan Rourke and the Lions. And the Hamilton Ticats and the Ottawa REDBLACKS rematch each other from last week, this time in the nation's capital. Edmonton, the aforementioned Edmonton Elks, are off this week. And we enter week 7 with some teams on some streaks here. Hamilton has won 3 games in a row. Ottawa has lost 3 games in a row. BC and Calgary have both won back-to-back games. Montreal's coming off of back-to-back losses, but look like they're probably going to be getting Davis Alexander back under center, which is huge news for them. So we got teams looking to stay hot or snap the schneid. So why don't we start in Montreal, where once again the Alouettes are going to play host to the Toronto Argos. Both of these teams coming into this week off of a bye from last week, where of course we only had 3 games on the schedule in week 6. So again, both teams coming off byes and both teams coming off of losses the last time we saw them. The Argos coughing up 51 points to the Hamilton Ticats 2 weeks ago. The Alouettes getting walked off by BC. Big storyline in this game, obviously, is what's going on under center. The Argos are going to have to wait at least one more week for Chad Kelly to return. But again, Davis Alexander looks like he's going to be returning for Montreal, which is a huge boon to their entire offense. Despite the pair of back-to-back losses, Montreal are still like the efficiency kings of the CFL as far as I'm concerned. Highly efficient offense, highly efficient defense. The Argos have a top 3 offensive efficiency as well, but the worst defensive efficiency in the CFL to start the season. Both of these teams, I think, are somewhat better than their record. Montreal's 3-2 off the back-to-back losses. I think Toronto's only won maybe one game this year, so I think they're better than a one-win team, that's for sure. But the quarterback matchup here definitely tips the scales for Montreal if Davis Alexander is back anywhere near 100% coming off the hamstring injury. Gotta lean on Montreal here to kind of get back to the winning ways now that they're going to have their quarterback back under center. There's a possibility that Tyson Philpott doesn't play this week. I think he's been kind of nursing an injury, but hopefully with that bye week, he is ready to play. I think that's kind of still questionable and up in the air at this point. But either way, I like the Alouettes here. Let's take Montreal at home to get the win over Toronto. This game far and away sports the largest spread of the week, with the Alouettes currently favored by 9.5 points against the spread. And that for me is too much because, again, you got a quarterback here who hasn't played in a couple of weeks, hamstring injuries, soft tissue. Sometimes they can take longer to rehab than some other injuries. There's still too many question marks there. I need to see the complete package at this point with Alexander where he's at with that injury. 9.5 points is just a lot of points to lay. So I like Montreal to win, but I'm going to kind of hedge my bets here. Take the plus 9.5 on the Toronto Argos. Them winning this game outright is not off the table. So give me Montreal to win. Give me the plus 9.5 on Toronto. Total in this game set at 50.5 points. I do think Montreal wins this game relatively comfortably. I'm going to give it to them by a fully converted touchdown, but not by the 9.5 points, I should say. I am going to take an over here, I think, because, again, I like Montreal's offense better with Alexander under center. The Argos have really struggled against the run, so Sean Thomas-Erlington, I think, is in line for a pretty big game. Give me an over on this point total, even though it's fairly close. I'm still going to take the over. Give me a 31-23 final for the Alouettes. So Montreal wins. Toronto covers the plus 9.5, although just barely with my score, but they do cover it. And give me an over on the 50.5 point total. We go off to Winnipeg now, where the Bombers are going to come off their second bye of the season already, and they are now embarking on a stretch where I think when I looked at the schedule, they play like 10 or 11 straight games. So the schedule makers did Winnipeg absolutely no favors whatsoever with the 2 early season byes. They've only played 4 games this season. We're entering week 7. Winnipeg is going to play host here to the Calgary Stampeders on the tail end of back-to-back road games, but one of the hottest teams in the CFL, winning back-to-back games, including, again, that big upset win last week, or sort of an upset in the eyes of many anyway, against the Riders. And the Stamps are officially for real coming off of that game. There's no question marks about that team and whether they're for real anymore. That was a defensive statement game against the Riders, who have been a very good team this year, basically top to bottom. They forced the Riders to play a completely one-dimensional game, totally took the run game out of the equation, forced them to throw the ball early and often. Riders just abandoned the run entirely. The Stamps clamped down on crucial downs. They were very good on second down and in the red zone, where I believe they forced Sasky to go only maybe 1 for 3, I think, in the red zone. So Trevor Harris had a ton of pass yards, but when it came down to the important downs, the important down and distance, the critical moments of the game, the Stamps were there from the beginning of the game right until the end. It was a defensive masterclass for Calgary. Also a shout out to Damian Alford. Huge breakout game for him. 6 catches, $156 through the air, and a pair of touchdowns. For Winnipeg, the Bombers are off their bye week after losing to this Calgary team by 3 scores 2 weeks ago. So you think these guys are hungry for a rematch? They've had to sit with that game for close to 2 weeks. This could very easily be the game of the week. You know, I just can't imagine a scenario where we see a repeat performance of the 2 pick sixes that Zach Collaros gave up in that game 2 weeks ago. It's worth noting, neither Dalton Schoen nor Stanley Bryant are practicing right now, so the chances of both of them missing this game are certainly high. So we'll be very interested to kind of watch the practice reports for the remainder of this week. Either way, I think I like Winnipeg to grab some revenge here. It's not like Calgary is going to go unbeaten for the rest of the season, and I just feel like this is one of those scenarios where, you know, Calgary got him good a couple weeks ago. Winnipeg got to sit with it through the bye. I think these two teams are comparable enough that exchanging wins kind of makes sense to me. So, especially catching the Stamps on the second straight road game, let's take Winnipeg at home to get the win over Calgary and avenge that loss from a couple weeks back. On the line, Winnipeg is laying -4 here as the home favorite. It's such a marginal number, and Winnipeg, I mean, there's no team that's better rested in the league than Winnipeg is because they've had 2 bye weeks already. So let's go ahead and have them lay the -4. I don't love that number. I'd love it a lot more at -3, but I'll lay the -4 because it would be a pretty marginal hedge. Total in the game set at 50 points. I actually like this number to go under, even though it's the smallest number of the week thus far. I kind of like the under here. I think a mid-40 makes more sense than a 50 with these two defenses and how good we know both of them can be. I'm going to go like a 26-20, something like that, in favor of the Bombers. I have the Bombers winning the game. I have the Bombers covering -4 and give me an under on the 50-point total. Speaking of those aforementioned Saskatchewan Roughriders, they hit the road this week in BC, taking on Nathan Rourke and the BC Lions. Riders, of course, coming into this game off that loss last week, their first loss of the season. So again, been a strong start to them this year. Big yardage in the pass game, 425 pass yards for Trevor Harris coming out of that game, but no finish. It only generated 10 points on the board, which is like an efficiency nightmare. It's not great. Again, the run game got absolutely nullified in that game against Calgary, and they turned the ball over 4 times. Quite simply put, the combination of terrible efficiency and turnovers and a nullified run game is not the formula that led to the 4-0 start for the Riders. Their formula is pound the football, put up points, high efficiency offense, high efficiency defense. That's the way they've started this season. We didn't see that last week. It's hard to imagine that we don't see that 2 weeks in a row. For BC, the Lions have won back-to-back games since the return of Nathan Rourke from that oblique injury that he was dealing with, and they beat up a hapless and hopeless Edmonton Elks team last week. Edmonton looked like they weren't 100% sure what sport they were playing at some points in that game. Like, they just didn't look, I don't know, they didn't look like they had anything. Like, they looked like, they're like, yeah, we're here, but we've got nothing to offer this game. Like, that's just kind of what they looked like. And that was despite a pair of turnovers from BC and the fact that they took like 10 penalties. It's not like Edmonton didn't have opportunities in that game. BC gave them some opportunities. They had absolutely nothing for them. Nathan Rourke once again looked great in that game last week for BC, as did James Butler, who touched the ball 32 times. Thank you. That's the kind of volume you want to see from a guy like James Butler. 32 touches, 206 all-purpose yards for James Butler in that game, as well as a rush touchdown. But we do have to kind of be cognizant of the idea that that game could be looked at, to take a Panini parlance here. Is that game a false positive? Because once again, I kind of know how I felt about this Lions team coming into that game last week. And yeah, the numbers all looked great coming out of that game last week. But again, they were against Edmonton, and it looked like Edmonton had nothing for them. So is this one of those games where, yeah, BC looked great, but they looked great for a very specific reason rather than the fact that they're actually great and bucking the numbers that I can kind of see right in front of me? And those numbers that I see right in front of me look like this. I don't believe the Lions are as good as they looked last week. I don't believe that the Riders are as bad as they looked last week. I do believe BC is playing their 7th game of the season, not having had a bye yet this season. I do have to believe that fatigue for those players who have played every game is going to start setting in. Because again, I still think BC is a couple of weeks away from a bye. I think they're going to get got here, and I think the Riders bounce back from that first loss of the season. Give me Saskatchewan on the road in BC to beat the Lions. Now on the line, BC's laying -1 here as a marginal home favorite. I like Sasky to win. Give me the +1 against the spread. Total in the game set at 52.5 points. I do like this to go over, mostly because I know Saskatchewan's going to be missing some players in their secondary, or it at least looks like they're going to be missing some players in their secondary. So I think that's going to wind up kind of bumping the score up. And again, the Lions, their total defense is great. Their efficiency is not. I believe they were either second from the bottom or something in efficiency so far this season. So that number does not lie to me. So I think that pushes the point total here into an over. Again, it's 52.5. It's not a small number, but I like this game to get into a mid to high 50. So give me the over. Let's go with a 34-24 final for the Riders. Sasky wins. Sasky covers the marginal +1 and give me an over on the 52.5 point total. And the last game of the week sees the rematch from last week, the Hamilton Ticats in Ottawa taking on the REDBLACKS. The Ticats, as winners of 3 straight games, I would say lay claim to the title of the CFL's hottest team. They are above 500, very notably for the first time since November of 2021. That's crazy. On Ottawa's side, they lose their 3rd consecutive game, coughing up 4 turnovers in that game, as well as a 10-0 run against them in the 4th quarter. Again, this was a 3-point game. Ottawa just had absolutely nothing for them offensively in the 4th quarter. That's what wound up costing them that game. What a combination of receiver duos we have in this matchup. I kind of wish we could watch this every single week. For Hamilton, obviously Kenny Lawler, but as well Tim White. Those 2 guys combine for 10 catches, a $155, and 2 touchdowns on 21 targets in the pass game last week. Not to be outdone, Geno Lewis and Justin Hardy answer that to combine for 13 catches and a $196 on an equal number of targets, 21 targets, in that game last week. An embarrassment of riches in the pass game for both of these teams. Both of these teams are certainly beatable. Obviously, it's been a little more difficult to beat Hamilton over the last few weeks, but it's not like they're a world beater of a team. They are definitely beatable. Both of them are. It's just very difficult to look at these 2 teams in a head-to-head matchup and really be confident in backing one particular team over the other one, and that's the Ottawa REDBLACKS. It's a lot tougher to get excited about what you're seeing in Ottawa right now than it is to get excited over what you're seeing in Hamilton, where, again, the quarterback play's been very good, the receiver play has been excellent, and the defense that's been kind of living and dying on the turnover has been living over the last couple of weeks. I think we stick with Hamilton here. I think they kind of keep the party going. Let's take the Ticats on the road in Ottawa to beat the REDBLACKS. Eventually, the bleeding here is going to stop for Ottawa. I just don't think it's this week. On the line, the REDBLACKS, who are also playing their 7th game of the season, like the BC Lions, waiting for their first bye. They're 1.5 point dogs here at home. I like Hamilton to win, so let's lay the -1.5 on the Ticats. Total in the game here set at 54. It's the biggest total of the week. The whole league went under last week. But I just feel like we're going to see, even though we only saw 43 points in this matchup last week, I don't know. I'm feeling another over here. I think the points are showing up this week plentifully. So I think I got to take the over here. Over 54 points in Hamilton, Ottawa, but I think that number's pretty good. Give me a 33-23 final in favor of the Ticats. So Ticats win. Ticats cover the -1.5 and give me an over on the 54 point total. So now that you have your game picks, it's time for the fantasy picks. Your week 7, my week 7 CFL fantasy roster is right in front of your eyes right now. I definitely had a debate here at quarterback. I mean, look, Nathan Rourke has been absolutely unbelievable since coming back over the last couple of weeks. It's tough to keep him out of the lineup. So I think we're going to go ahead and take Nathan Rourke because, again, the Riders secondary is a little beat up and statistically hasn't been fantastic. And I think we're going to go ahead and stack him with Stanley Berryhill III, who was in my lineup last week, had a very solid performance, I think 20 points or something like that. So we're going to go ahead and stack Rourke with Berryhill III. My running back combination is the combination of acronyms. We are going with AJO and STE. Yes, that is AJ Ouellette and Sean Thomas Erlington. Even though AJO really got shut down in the run game last week, I quite like the prospects here for AJO against a BC Lions team that is giving up a metric ton of yardage on the ground. And Sean Thomas Erlington, same deal. I think the Argos statistically have the worst run defense in the entire league. I'm going to pair Berryhill with Carrick Wheatfall at receiver. It looks like probably no Dalton Schoen this week for Winnipeg, which should open up a bunch of targets for the Bombers' leading receiver on the season, who is Carrick Wheatfall. So we're going to go ahead and put him in the lineup as well. I had a lot of options at flex. I had about 10 grand to spend here. So I'm going to go with Greg Bell for the Ticats. He didn't start last week. I think he's going to be ready to start this week, but I will kind of be watching the injury reports there to see what plays out there. And again, against the REDBLACKS, I feel like it's a good matchup. I'm going to take the Ticats defense, even though I'm taking them in a game that I have the total going over 54. I'm kind of trying to save some money there. I think they're only like 7 grand or something like that. We're trying to save some money, and I saved some money on the defense. There you go, folks. Those are your picks and plays for week 7 in the CFL. We'll go over them here with you one more time. I got the Montreal Alouettes beating the Toronto Argos 31-23. I've got the Argos covering plus 9.5, a total going over 50.5 points. I got the Winnipeg Blue Bombers beating the Calgary Stampeders 26-20, getting revenge for the game from a couple of weeks ago. I got the Bombers laying the -4 and an under on the 50-point total. I got the Saskatchewan Roughriders beating the BC Lions 34-24, taking +1 on the Riders here on the road in a game that goes over the 52.5 point total. And I got the Hamilton Ticats on the road in Ottawa beating the REDBLACKS 33-23, laying the -1.5 on Hamilton and taking an over on the 54-point total. There you have it, folks. That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter. I appreciate you bearing with me. Still dealing with some stuff in here, but feeling better every day. Enjoy the games in week 7. We will see you again for week number 8.